Hello and welcome to another Reaconteur video, and in today's video I'm going to be going over whether or not the game RogueBlox is actually any good and discuss both positive and negative viewpoints a lot of players have on it. Make sure to subscribe since only about 20% of the people watching right now are actually subscribed. And also I'm live on Twitch, come watch me on Twitch. I'm playing Pressure, the new Pressure update with fans. There's gonna be 50 people, we got 50 people in Pressure. You guys, I'm playing with you guys on Twitch, so come watch me on Twitch and come to that stream and come play with me. Anyway, let's get straight into it. Alright, so first of all, let's talk about what lots of people are claiming as stolen content. The game is heavily inspired, or at least kind of idea ripped from Terraria. And while being a Roblox game, they both reused and recreated hundreds of assets from the game Terraria. Clearly big fans. Using original soundtracks from Terraria, sound effects, and even bosses and enemies. Now, this game is under some community backlash for this, for the stealing of assets and ideas from an indie game. But realistically, I think people are going a bit overboard with this, acting like Terraria is a tiny game with currently unknown developers who need the credit, and these huge, massive Roblox devs are stealing their assets and putting it into their game for free. And while yes, they're still stealing assets to some degree, and their ideas aren't very original, with lots of it being recreated nearly one for one with Terraria, can you guys stop acting like just because Terraria is technically an indie game, this is somehow harming the devs? The game's made $250 million. A Roblox game using some ideas and sound effects isn't nearly an issue for them. They do not care. With that being said though, it is still kind of lame how much of Terraria's assets they use, and I'm not hating for the reusing of assets, because if we want to go there, at least half of Deep Woken sound effects are taken from FromSoft's games, and about 90% of the modern day mantras and legendary weapons are inspired by anime. But RogueBlox doesn't even have its own soundtrack. All the songs in-game are mostly taken from other sources, predominantly Terraria, which is honestly kind of lame. The game lacks its own identity due to the usage of heavy inspiration in certain areas, and even the map, which I'll get to later, is quite resemblant of Rogue Lineage, feeling like a more detailed version of Rogue's maps with aesthetics that are cheaper compared to what we would do today in order to emulate like 2015, 2018-ish Roblox in order to prey on people's nostalgia of older Roblox. Now, about the game itself, first of all, the absolute worst part of the game is the beginning. Early game is terrible, and it is a disgusting mess. The game features an open tutorial, which is basically just a control scheme and basic combat skill rundown that they pretty much just included seemingly so YouTubers like Eclipse couldn't shit on them for it. But also the tutorial is open and happens within the overworld with no protection. So imagine you just start playing the game and you're trying to learn the controls, and suddenly you get attacked by someone who's 6 times stronger than you because of progression. And as he's gripping you, he types progression in the chat because he thinks it makes it, I don't know, somehow less annoying, when it's actually more annoying. Because the game's progression is similar to Rogue Lineage, being based on kills and like jail rots and primarily focusing on PvP, while having some PvE focus through missions and mission boards, needing PvP for later progression depending on what classes you want. Now, this game is basically baby Rogue Lineage. The entire main alignment system and mechanic is taken almost one for one straight from Rogue Lineage, with you either doing good things to be orderly or doing bad things and killing people to become disorderly, aka chaotic, with small quests like giving the homeless guy the coin versus, I don't know, beating him to death. Now, the game also has a gladiator arena, which lets you fight with or without losing lives, while the non-casual gladiator has a ton of super good loot, so once you get your super class, you basically just go on by spamming gladiator arena, since even winning it once will get you a ton of life shards back. Now, the game as a whole takes aspects from Rogue Lineage a lot, while taking the ease of use mechanics from Deep Woken, like letting you pass items down through lives. It's essentially supposed to be Rogue Lineage with easier difficulties and less RNG reliant stuff like the races in Rogue. And surprisingly, the game has free race rerules, which is cool, but it doesn't really mean too much. It's more of a courtesy because the races in this game aren't super major. Now, the game's class system does work how Rogue Lineage's does, having super and ultra classes, but the difference is that your scaling and strength are much more consistent. In Rogue Lineage, you kind of just get 2 or 3 massive bumps in strength and power from base to super to ultra class, and you pretty much get all of those at once because going out of your way to get a max ultra class multiple times sucked. In this game, you get consistently stronger as you progress your way through a class, which I think is good. Now, as for the combat, let's cover the PvE first. I actually like the PvE quite a bit. It's definitely the better side of combat. I like how most of the enemies have clear-cut combos and patterns that you can learn, and the PvP and the PvE as a whole is easily a step above Rogue Lineage PvE. But honestly, that's not saying much because Rogue Lineage PvE was the absolute worst piece of shit on all of Roblox. You either got infinite comboed or spammed enemies to death. And then they removed the abilities of burning enemies that are like monsters in order to get chaotic, which just made the progression much harder. And it's basically impossible to solo progress off of PvE. and even if it were possible, good luck. I, however, cannot say the same thing about the PvP in this game. I do not like RogueBlox PvP. I just don't. The PvP kind of crutches on the gimmick that it's a modern Roblox game that isn't parry-based. Like, actually, that's 90% of what this game markets itself as. A modern Roblox game that isn't parry-based. This is due to the oversaturation of parry-based games on Roblox, but regardless, I think it's a bad way of marketing because the PvP feels wrong for this. While the PvE is fine, it feels like many of the moves in the game were made in inspiration of Deepwoken, a parry-based game. Meanwhile, these moves were made for Deepwoken, a parry-based game. RogueBlox isn't parry-based. The devs of Roblox have moves inspired by Deepwoken moves, which are much slower than Rogue Lineage moves, which makes the PvP combat feel like it would benefit from a parry system of some sort, but there just isn't one. Because it is slow in a way that would make you expect, oh, parries like Deepwoken. Because in Deepwoken, most of the moves are either slow or readable with a little bit of practice. In Rogue Lineage, they aren't either, which that's not good game design, honestly. But it just feels too slow to be Rogue Lineage. It lacks a parry mechanic. The game also isn't mechanically the same or as advanced as Rogue Lineage. The blocking and crits, for example, are much slower, and the base combat mechanics feel flowier, utilizing more movement but less movement tech. For example, in Rogue Lineage, a lot of people use certain techs like non-macro move stacking, or turnaround hits with certain skills, or using the dashes to get around people. But RogueBlox lacks advanced tech like this, which is kind of lame and gives a lack of longevity to the combat. And along with that, back to the point of being baby Rogue Lineage, the game has a lot of ease of access stuff like mana shield off spawn, and stuff like this which is made to make it easier and less reliant on ult accounts to make the solo progression easier. This is a good thing. I'm not talking bad about this. I think it's good that they make certain things more accessible, because in Rogue Lineage, not having mana shield on spawn or having to wait an hour before you can run and climb was honestly one of the worst decisions they made in that entire game, so I'm happy that they at least try to improve on that with this. Because this game is a spiritual successor to Rogue Lineage. It's inspired off of it heavily, it's meant to be like Rogue Lineage 2, but the problem is it doesn't play like Rogue Lineage. The game's combat as a whole doesn't feel anything like Rogue Lineage, so it really doesn't appeal to Rogue Lineage players. It appeals to people who got into Rogue Lineage too late and couldn't manage it because it was too hard, because you can't solo progress in Rogue Lineage nowadays. And it appeals to people who have basically never played Rogue Lineage, but romanticize the idea of the first hardcore permadeath game on Roblox, which is kind of lame. Now, I don't think the game itself is lame. I just think that the group it appeals to is kind of lame, because it's basically appealing to everyone that wanted to play Rogue Lineage but couldn't get far in it. It appeals to Rogue Lineage permafreshies, essentially. Now, along with that, the first spawn area is literally Or's Fall from Rogue Lineage, with most of the map being loosely similar to Rogue Lineage, with areas like the Tundra, which literally opens up from a big gate you can climb around. The Lost Forest is quite literally just a slightly bigger, more visible version of Rogue's Lost Forest, and the main biome is just a large, normal temperate forest like Rogue Lineage. Essentially, the map is just Rogue Lineage's map recreated under someone else's vision. It's not bad, but it's overall just a pretty big inspiration or copy of Rogue Lineage's map. It's kind of like imagining a game made by someone with a separate vision with slightly different core mechanics, but loosely everything is going to be resemblant. Now, I don't think the game is as bad as some people say, but I don't think it's nearly as good as other people say. I feel like both sides of this are a stupid extreme. The people calling it the Deepwoken Killer are just bored of Deep's lack of major content updates because Runeslayer was called the same thing. Realistically, any game you call the Deepwoken Killer is cursed with idiotic devs who are going to periodically do nothing and ruin their game in any way possible. The other side of the people consistently hating on the game and calling it terrible really aren't realistic either. The game isn't awful or terrible or even bad, and it does have a lot of work and effort put into it regardless of whether or not it was dedicated to things like OST and sound effects or not. The game deserves to be treated like a middle ground. It's not an amazing Deepwoken Killer, but it's not an awful game worth hunting the devs over. If it's just a week of fun, let it just be a week of fun. At least that's a week people spend having fun. The game's just alright in my opinion. I don't think it's amazing, I don't think it's bad, I think I don't like lots of the core mechanics, but some people do, and if you don't like Rogue Lineage, maybe you'll like this, and if you do like Rogue Lineage, maybe you won't like this. Who knows? That's for you to make the decision on your own. So is the game actually good? Yeah, it's fine. It's literally just fine. If you're hearing people glaze it, they're dumb. If you're hearing people hate on it without giving actual points or saying it's the worst game ever made, they're dumb too, okay? Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed. If you wanted to add on to any of my arguments or any points I covered or didn't cover in this video, leave it down in the comments below. Feel free to discuss. I read every comment. You guys should know this by now. And catch me playing Pressure on Twitch. I'll be live back on Deltarune on Wednesday, and then once we finish Deltarune's Chapter 3 and 4, I'll be doing Hollow Knight 112% runs, so make sure to subscribe, check out my second channel on Twitch. Shout out to YouTube members Green, Brick, Pickle, Goobka, High Card, and Drizzy Drake fan. I love you all, have an amazing day, and goodbye.